Welcome to the Veil of Truth, your gateway to uncovering hidden insights and illuminating mysteries. I'm thrilled you've joined our global community. Whether you're watching from a bustling city skyline or a quiet countryside, we're glad you're here. Globe showing Europe, Africa, so tell me, where are you tuning in from today? Chapter 1, A Country House Invitation. The Morning Post had just arrived when I entered Hercule Poirot's sitting room. He was already seated at his breakfast table, a neat arrangement of coffee, rolls, and a perfectly boiled egg before him. As ever, not a crumb strayed, not a knife or fork was out of place. His moustaches were groomed to a degree that would have shamed a regiment on parade. "Good morning, Hastings," he said with a gracious nod. "You are early." "Sit, mon ami, sit." I took the chair opposite, eyeing the neat bundle of letters beside him. Poirot had a way of making even the humdrum post seem a matter of significance, for he examined each envelope with the care of a jeweler inspecting diamonds. "It is curious, Hastings," he remarked, tapping one envelope delicately with his finger. "See here, the handwriting is bold, extravagant, with loops most unnecessary. And yet, the paper is of the highest quality. A contradiction, n'est-ce pas? Some lady admirer, no doubt," I suggested. He gave me a reproving glance, though his lips twitched. "Your English humor is incorrigible." "No, mon ami, this is more serious. Observe the crest upon the flap, and are entwined. It belongs to Lady Selina Rathbone, of Haverley Court in Sussex. A lady of, how shall I say, reputation." "What sort of reputation?" I asked, intrigued. Poirot shrugged delicately. "Wealthy. Twice widowed. Some would say charming, others ruthless. A woman who has lived much in society, and yet has few true friends. Now listen." He broke the seal with a silver opener and read aloud in his precise manner. "Monsieur Poirot, I beg you will come at once to Haverley Court. I have a matter of life and death to discuss. It is most delicate, most urgent. I dare not commit more to paper. I entreat you, without delay. Selina Rathbone." I whistled softly. "Sounds dramatic enough. What do you make of it?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "When a lady such as Lady Selina writes so, Hastings, it is not idle fancy. There is danger, OUI. And where there is danger, there may soon be crime." It was decided then and there that we would travel to Sussex. Poirot packed with his usual precision 2 valises, his dressing case, and a smaller one devoted entirely to brushes, pomades, and that arsenal devoted to the care of his moustaches. I confess I looked forward to the journey, for there was something alluring about the promise of an old country house and a mystery to unravel. Haverley Court stood proud upon a gentle rise, its stone facade mellowed by centuries. Ivy clung to its walls, the chimneys thrust like watchful sentries into the evening sky. The carriage swept us up the gravel drive, and I caught sight of lighted windows, warm against the dusk. It might have been a scene of peace, yet I felt a curious unease, as though the house itself were holding its breath. The great oak door opened to reveal Lady Selina herself. She was a tall woman, her hair a rich auburn not untouched by art, her eyes sharp and bright as cut glass. She wore velvet, deep midnight blue, and a necklace of pearls that gleamed at her throat. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice rich with authority, "and Captain Hastings, of course. I am obliged you came so swiftly. Do come in. Haverley is always cold at the threshold." Her manner was both commanding and charming, and I found myself both impressed and a little intimidated. Poirot bowed, his hand upon his heart. "You do us honor, madam. But you spoke of urgency." "All in good time," she replied with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "You must meet the others first. It is always best to know one's company." She led us through a hall of portraits into a drawing room where several guests were assembled. The atmosphere was lively on the surface, but beneath it ran an undercurrent of tension. First there was Clara Rathbone, a young woman of striking features, dressed in the severe style of one who wishes to be taken seriously. She eyed her stepmother with thinly veiled dislike. At her side lounged her brother, Hugh Rathbone, handsome but with a recklessness in his manner, the sort of man who gambles too easily and laughs too loudly. By the fire stood Mr. Ashcroft, a barrister, smooth of speech and cautious of expression, as though every word were weighed before release. Near him hovered Miss Dyer, Lady Selina's secretary, a pale, slight woman who seemed perpetually on the verge of a nervous collapse. And finally, adding a touch of foreign glamour, was Elena Mokova, a violinist of some repute, with dark eyes and an accent that lent music to her speech. Introductions were made. Poirot's presence caused no small stir. Clara raised her brows as though to say, another of Selina's theatrics. Hugh muttered something about a Belgian sleuth at dinner, while Miss Dyer looked positively stricken. Dinner that evening was a curious affair. The food was excellent, roast pheasant, new potatoes, and a delicate trifle, yet conversation flickered with hidden barbs. Clara and Hugh pressed their stepmother about her estate. She deflected with laughter. Elena played with her wineglass, her gaze lingering on Selina in a manner difficult to read. Ashcroft spoke of legal matters too vague to grasp, while Miss Dyer scarcely touched her plate. It was then Lady Selina made her announcement. She lifted her glass and said lightly, "I have today instructed my lawyer to revise my will. I dare say it will surprise some of you." The silence was profound. Clara's fork clattered to her plate. Hugh flushed scarlet. Miss Dyer gave a strangled little gasp. Only Poirot's eyes shone with interest, as though he had anticipated the moment. "Do not look so stricken, my dears," Selina said with a laugh, though her gaze was cool. "A woman may dispose of her property as she pleases. Let us drink instead, to the future." The toast was drunk, but the gaiety had gone out of the room. Poirot leaned toward me and murmured, "Observe them, Hastings. Every face reveals one affair. In this house of velvet, I think the claws are very sharp indeed." Later, as we retired to our chambers, I could not shake the unease that had seized me at dinner. There was something theatrical in Lady Selina's announcement, as though she had wished to provoke her household. Yet why summon Poirot in secret, if she merely sought to tease them with her will? "Poirot," I said as we settled by the fire in his room, "what do you make of her?" He steepled his fingers, eyes half closed. "A woman most intelligent, most dangerous. She holds them all in her hand, the stepchildren, the secretary, the lawyer, even the beautiful violinist. And yet, Hastings, one who holds too tightly may one day find the hand crushed in return." I laughed uneasily. "You think she is in danger?" Poirot opened his eyes. "She told us so herself. A matter of life and death, she wrote. Mon ami, when a lady warns of her peril, I take her at her word. We must be vigilant. Something tells me the night will bring shadows to Haverley Court." As I bid him good night, the echo of Lady Selina's laughter still haunted the corridors. Yet beneath that laughter, I thought I heard something else, the faint sound of velvet drawn tight. Chapter 2: The Dinner of Shadows. Dinner at Haverley Court that night was set with all the grandeur of a country house clinging to its former glory. The dining room, though spacious and richly panelled, bore signs of faded splendor, gilt picture frames dulled by time, velvet curtains slightly frayed at the edges, the silver polished but not quite gleaming. Lady Selina, however, presided over the table as though it were Versailles itself. She sat at the head, upright and majestic, her pearls gleaming against the midnight velvet of her gown. Poirot was placed on her right, myself opposite Mr. Ashcroft the barrister, while the others arranged themselves with little ceremony. A great chandelier of cut glass hung above us, scattering light in soft prisms over silver and crystal. The meal began with consommé, clear and golden. Conversation, like the soup, was thin at first, yet it soon grew more seasoned. "So, Captain Hastings," Lady Selina said with a smile, "do you find Sussex agreeable after London?" "Very much so," I replied politely. "There is a certain charm in the country one cannot find in the city." "Charm, perhaps," she said, her eyes flicking briefly toward her stepdaughter, "but not always tranquility." Clara Rathbone set down her spoon with a faint clatter. "Tranquility, stepmother, is rarely found where people make a sport of disturbance." Lady Selina's smile did not waver. "Ah, my dear Clara, you speak as though disturbance were thrust upon you. One must not confuse it with the natural movement of life." Hugh laughed rather too loudly, his voice carrying. "Natural movement indeed. You are a philosopher tonight, Selina. I suppose we must all bow to your wisdom." There was mockery in his tone. Poirot glanced at him thoughtfully, then turned his gaze back to Lady Selina, who sipped her wine with deliberate elegance. The second course was pheasant, its aroma rich with herbs. Conversation shifted, yet the undercurrents remained. Elena Mokova, resplendent in a gown of scarlet silk, leaned forward to address Poirot. "Monsieur, I have long admired your name in the papers. They say you solve impossible things, that you look into the soul of people. Is it true?" Poirot inclined his head modestly. "I attempt only to use the little grey cells, mademoiselle. They tell me more than the eyes alone." "A dangerous gift," murmured Mr. Ashcroft. His long fingers toyed with the stem of his glass. "Too much insight can make one unpopular, especially in households such as this." Lady Selina gave him a sharp look, though her lips curved. "Unpopular or not, truth is always refreshing. Do you not think so, Mr. Ashcroft?" The barrister coughed into his napkin and did not answer. I found myself studying Miss Dyer, the secretary, who sat pale and silent at the far end. She had scarcely eaten a morsel. Her eyes, downcast, darted occasionally toward Lady Selina, then quickly away again. Once, when she lifted her fork, her hand trembled so violently she nearly dropped it. Poirot noticed too. I saw his gaze settle briefly on her, then upon the salt cellar, then upon the arrangement of cutlery at her side. To me they were trivialities, to Poirot, I knew, each might be a piece of some unseen pattern. Dessert was brought in, a delicate trifle with almonds and cream. The chandelier glittered, the silver gleamed, but the air grew heavy with unspoken words. It was then Lady Selina chose to make her move. She set down her spoon, folded her hands, and looked around the table with the satisfaction of a queen about to pronounce judgment. "My dear friends, my family," she said, her voice clear, "I have today consulted Mr. Ashcroft regarding certain legal matters. Chief among them, my will. I have thought it prudent to make alterations." The words dropped like stones into still water. A silence followed, deep and uneasy. Hugh half rose from his chair. "Alterations? What the devil do you mean?" "Sit down, Hugh," Clara snapped. She herself was white about the lips, her eyes burning with suppressed fury. Elena gave a little laugh, musical but strained. "Ah, but surely this is no matter to discuss over pudding." Ashcroft shifted uneasily in his seat. "Lady Selina, I hardly think." "Nonsense," she cut in crisply. "Why should we tiptoe? I have every right to dispose of my fortune as I please. And I mean to do so. Who knows? Some of you may be pleasantly surprised. Others," she let the sentence trail off, her smile curling like smoke. Miss Dyer's spoon clattered against her dish. She made a small sound, half gasp, half sob, and hurriedly dabbed at her lips with her napkin. No one spoke. At last Lady Selina laughed, a silvery, chilling laugh. But I shall not spoil the game by telling you more. You must wait, as one waits for the unmasking in a play. Now, let us drink to the future. Glasses were raised, though half-heartedly. Hugh drained his in one swallow, Clara merely touched hers to her lips. Elena sipped with studied nonchalance, and Miss Dyer could scarcely hold hers steady. Poirot, ever attentive, lifted his own glass slowly. He did not drink at once, but studied the champagne as though it might reveal a clue in its bubbles. When at last the toast was concluded, conversation faltered. The evening limped to its end. Coffee was served in the drawing-room, but few drank it. Clara excused herself on the pretext of a headache. Hugh went to smoke alone. Ashcroft disappeared into the library with a sheaf of papers. Elena played a melancholy strain upon the piano, while Miss Dyer busied herself with embroidery she could barely see for trembling hands. Poirot and I sat apart near the fire. At length he leaned close, speaking so softly I alone could hear. "Mon ami, did you observe? Every face at that table was a mask. Some concealed anger, some fear, some calculation. But none were indifferent. That is most significant. You think Lady Selina meant to provoke them?" I asked. Poirot spread his hands. "Mise OUI. She enjoys the drama. But in creating such a scene, she risks awakening dangerous passions. I do not like it, Hastings. It is as though she walks upon velvet, but beneath that velvet lie claws, sharp and waiting." He sat back, eyes half-lidded, fingers steepled in thought. I stared into the fire, uneasy. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the panes. Somewhere in the house a door closed with a hollow echo. And all the while, the image of Lady Selina remained fixed in my mind, her triumphant smile, her glittering eyes, and her careless taunt, "You must wait for the unmasking in a play." I shivered. For it seemed to me that the play she had begun tonight might end not in laughter, but in tragedy. Chapter 3, The Midnight Cry. The house was hushed when at last we retired. Yet I could not sleep. The events of the dinner had left me restless, my mind turning over Lady Selina's words, the reactions they had drawn, and the strange air of foreboding that seemed to linger in every corridor. The rain had begun, tapping faintly against the window, and the wind moaned through the chimney like a warning voice. I must have dozed at last, for when I next awoke it was to the sound of a scream. It was shrill, piercing, dreadful, the cry of a woman in mortal terror. I leapt from my bed, fumbling for my dressing gown. Almost at once I heard Poirot's voice from the adjoining room. "Hastings! Vite, vite! To Lady Selina!" We hurried along the passage, our candles guttering in the draught. Doors were opening all around us, Clara, white-faced, clutching a shawl, Hugh stumbling out half-dressed, Miss Dyer already weeping hysterically. We converged upon the grand oak door of Lady Selina's bedchamber. It was ajar. Poirot pushed it open with a firm hand. The scene within is one that will never leave me. Lady Selina lay upon the carpet beside her bed, her velvet gown twisted about her, her pearls broken and scattered like pale drops of moonlight. Her face was contorted, her lips parted as though she had cried out in her last instant. A single candle burned on the bedside table, casting grotesque shadows upon the walls. Miss Dyer gave a scream and fled. Clara stood rigid, her hands clenched. Hugh muttered an oath under his breath. Poirot bent at once, his every movement precise. He touched the body gently, then looked about the room with those sharp eyes of his that missed nothing. "She is dead," he said gravely. "There can be no doubt." Clara gave a sob, half relief, half horror. "Dead? Oh, thank God the torment is ended. No, I did not mean," she broke off, burying her face in her hands. Hugh's voice was rough. "Who's done this, eh? Who's dared? I'll wring the neck of the man. Poirot silenced him with a raised hand. Patience, monsieur. First we must see what is before us. I lit another candle, and the room sprang into fuller view. Its elegance was undisturbed at first glance, the grand four-poster with its hangings, the writing desk by the window, the tall mirror. Yet the disorder of the moment revealed itself upon inspection. A chair had been overturned. The drawer of the desk hung open. Upon the hearth, in the small grate, ashes smouldered faintly. Beside the bed lay a torn length of velvet ribbon, as though wrenched away in violence. And upon the small table by the bed stood a single champagne glass, still half full, a smear upon its rim. Poirot bent over it, sniffing delicately. Curious, he murmured. Champagne, and something more. What do you mean? I asked. He did not answer at once. Instead he crouched to examine the grate. With the tongs he drew out a scrap of scorched paper, fragile and crumbling. Yet faint upon its surface we could see the impression of blue sealing wax. A letter, said Poirot softly. Addressed, perhaps, to her lawyer. But almost destroyed. Almost, but not quite. Ashcroft, the barrister, had now joined us, his face pale and perspiring. Good God, he muttered. Lady Selina, murdered. But by whom? The windows are locked, the door was closed. No one could. Could they not? Poirot interrupted. He pointed to the lock of the window, firm, untouched. He glanced at the door, no sign of forcing. A room locked, yet a murder committed, he mused. It is the oldest trick, yet always fascinating. The household pressed closer. Elena Mokova, her eyes flashing darkly, whispered, "This is dreadful." And yet, I felt it would come. From the moment she spoke at dinner, I knew. Poirot straightened, his moustaches bristling. Knew, mademoiselle? That she would die. That someone would wish it, Elena replied coolly. She played with us, like a cat with mice. And sometimes, the mice strike back. Her words hung in the air. Hugh glared at her, Clara wept silently, and Miss Dyer moaned behind her handkerchief. Poirot turned to me. Hastings, be so good as to fetch my case. We must begin at once. Within moments he was at work, examining every inch of the chamber. He studied the ribbon, the glass, the scorched paper. He peered beneath the bed, ran a finger along the sill, sniffed at the pillow. He noted the position of Lady Selina's hands, the angle of her body. Nothing escaped him. At last he rose. This is no accident. It is murder, most certain. And it is also most clever. Clever? I asked. Poirot gestured delicately. The door, locked but not fastened, the window, secure, the glass of champagne, untouched by others. It is arranged to suggest impossibility. Yet there is no impossibility, only the illusion of it. And illusions, Hastings, are my specialite. The household looked on, some fearful, some defiant. Clara, her voice hard, said, "If you are what they say, Monsieur Poirot, then find the one who has done this. Find them, and be quick about it. For my stepmother was hated, yes, but none of us deserve to hang for her sake." Poirot inclined his head gravely. "Rest assured, mademoiselle. The truth, it always comes, and sooner than one thinks." He ordered the body covered, the room sealed. He instructed the servants to keep watch, forbidding anyone to remove or touch a thing. His authority was absolute, calm yet unyielding. At last we withdrew to the drawing room, where a fire burned low. The air was thick with smoke and fear. No one spoke. All sat in their own thoughts, Hugh staring at the carpet, Clara rigid as stone, Elena humming softly under her breath, Ashcroft wiping his brow, Miss Dyer trembling like a leaf. Poirot stood by the mantelpiece, gazing into the flames. Then he turned, his eyes sharp, his voice cutting the silence. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, "Lady Selina is dead. But the hand that killed her is here, in this house. Do not doubt it. And before long, that hand will betray itself, for the little grey cells, they do not rest." His words fell like a verdict. Outside, the wind howled across the dark lawns of Haverley Court, and the rain lashed harder against the windows. And so the game had begun. Chapter 4: The Circle of Suspects. The household assembled the following morning in the drawing-room at Poirot's request. The curtains were drawn back, revealing a grey, rain-swept garden beyond. The fire was lit, though it seemed to do little to dispel the chill that clung to the air. Each of the company took their place unwillingly, as though compelled by some unseen hand. Clara sat upright, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her expression stern. Hugh slouched in his chair, his eyes restless, his jaw set in defiance. Mr. Ashcroft occupied a corner seat, his thin lips pressed tight, fingers drumming faintly against his knee. Elena Mokova leaned elegantly against the piano, a figure of colour and confidence, her dark eyes half-lidded. Miss Dyer perched nervously upon the edge of a chair, twisting her handkerchief until it seemed it must tear. Poirot entered last, immaculate in a grey suit, his moustaches glistening with care. He looked around the room with a calm that belied the tension. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice precise and courteous, "Lady Selina has been murdered. There is no gentle way to put it. Last night, someone within this house took her life. And until the truth is revealed, suspicion will fall upon you all. It is therefore in everyone's interest that you speak with frankness." Hugh gave a derisive snort. "Frankness? That's rich. We're all suspects now, eh? Even her own family." Poirot inclined his head. "Especially her own family, monsieur. For it is within the family that passions run strongest. We shall examine, one by one, the circumstances. Captain Hastings will take notes." I drew out my pocket book, my pencil ready, while Poirot seated himself with deliberation. "Let us begin with you, mademoiselle," Poirot said, turning to Clara. Clara's chin lifted defiantly. "You needn't waste time. Everyone knows my feelings. I despised her. She took my father's name, his fortune, and gave nothing in return. She made our lives a misery. But I did not kill her." Poirot spread his hands. "Hatred, it is not proof. But hatred, it may lead to action. You feared she would disinherit you." Clara's lips tightened. "She threatened it often enough. I dare say she meant it this time. But I am not such a fool as to hang for her money." Poirot inclined his head slightly, as though filing away the answer. He turned to Hugh. "And you, monsieur?" Hugh laughed harshly. "What do you expect me to say? That I loved her? Hardly. She kept me on an allowance like a schoolboy, while she squandered thousands on jewels and dresses. Yes, I'm in debt. Yes, I needed money. But murder? No. I quarreled with her, I admit it. We quarreled often. But that doesn't make me a killer." "Nevertheless," Poirot said gently, "the quarrel, it is confirmed. You raised your voice, you were heard. And last night she announced a change to her will. If she cut you off, monsieur, your debts would swallow you whole." Hugh's face flushed, and he looked away. "You'll think what you like." Poirot did not press further. Instead, his eyes moved to Ashcroft. "Mr. Ashcroft, you are Lady Selina's barrister. You saw her yesterday regarding her will. Ashcroft cleared his throat, adjusting his cuffs. That is so. She instructed me to draw up a new codicil, to be witnessed today. She was, forgive me, in a state of considerable agitation. I counselled delay, but she was insistent. And the nature of this codicil? Poirot asked. The barrister hesitated. That, Monsieur Poirot, is a confidential matter. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Confidential? The lady is dead. The truth now is of greater importance than professional niceties. Ashcroft looked away, his face tense. I cannot. At least, not yet. Poirot let it pass, but I saw the flicker of steel in his eyes. He turned with sudden grace to Elena Markova. Mademoiselle, you were her guest. A friend, yes. Elena spread her hands elegantly. A companion, perhaps. She admired my playing. She wished to sponsor my tour in Europe. She promised a handsome sum. Poirot's brow lifted. Ah. A handsome sum. That is generous. But promises, they may be withdrawn, n'est-ce pas? Elena's eyes flashed. If she withdrew it, I should have been disappointed, yes. But murder? No, Monsieur Poirot. I am an artist, not a criminal. Poirot bowed slightly. Nevertheless, money is a motive for many. Even artists. Finally his gaze came to rest upon Miss Dyer. The secretary shrank beneath it, her face paling still further. Miss Dyer, Poirot said softly, you were devoted to Lady Selina, yes. Miss Dyer's lips trembled. I served her faithfully. Served, yes. But served gladly. Her hands twisted the handkerchief until it frayed. She could be hard. Harder than most know. She knew things. About me. She said she would, she faltered. But I never harmed her, I swear it. I could not. Poirot watched her keenly. Ah, but fear, it is a strong spur, mademoiselle. Sometimes stronger than hatred, stronger than greed. And you feared her greatly, did you not? The secretary broke into sobs and could not reply. Poirot rose. He moved slowly to the window, gazing out at the rain-lashed lawns. When he spoke, his voice carried quiet authority. Miss Amos, I do not accuse. Not yet. But let us be clear. Each of you had cause to wish Lady Selina harm. Clara feared disinheritance. Hugh, ruin. Mr. Ashcroft, some professional entanglement perhaps compromising. Mademoiselle Elena, the loss of promised fortune. And Miss Dyer, the fear of secrets revealed. The motives, they are plentiful. There was a heavy silence. The fire cracked. Rain battered against the panes. Poirot turned back, his eyes gleaming. Yet the hand that killed her is but one. And that hand has left behind traces, oh yes, small, but sufficient. Already I see them, faint as footprints in snow. They will lead me to the truth. Hugh shifted restlessly. Then why wait? Say it now, who killed her? Poirot smiled faintly, his moustaches bristling. None, monsieur. To rush is to stumble. Patience. The truth, it ripens like fruit. If plucked too soon, it is bitter. But give it time, and it falls into the hand. With that, he bowed and dismissed us. One by one the company withdrew, leaving Poirot and me alone by the fire. Well, Poirot, I said eagerly. What do you think? He tapped his fingertips together. I think, Hastings, that each has lied to me, a little, or a great deal. It is the lies that interest me. Always the lies. He glanced at the grate where the embers glowed faintly. And remember, mon ami, she was burning something. A letter. The truth is in that letter, and I shall find it. I felt a chill that the fire could not dispel. For though Poirot spoke calmly, the shadow of murder hung heavy over Hercule Court, and in every face I had seen the glimmer of guilt. Chapter 5: Secrets in Velvet. The following day dawned bleak, the sky a dull pewter. The lawns of Hercule Court were drenched, and the gravel drive ran with rivulets of water. Indoors, the atmosphere was no less heavy. Servants moved in hushed tones, and the guests avoided one another, drifting from room to room as though pursued by unseen spectres. Poirot, however, was in his element. He rose early, dressed with his usual care, and declared to me that the morning must be devoted to la petite inspection. "Hastings," he said, fastening his cuffs with exquisite precision, "we must look, we must listen, we must smell. Above all, we must not assume. In murder, as in life, it is the detail that betrays." We began in Lady Selina's chamber. The room had been left untouched by order of Poirot, and it bore still the air of interrupted life, the overturned chair, the scattered pearls, the glass of champagne upon the table. Poirot went first to the ribbon that lay beneath the bed. He lifted it with delicate fingers, examining its texture. "Velvet," he murmured. "Strong, supple. See how it is torn at one end, sharply, as though wrenched away in haste. It is no mere ornament, Hastings. It was a weapon." I shuddered. "You mean?" He made a small gesture. "Exactly so. Around the throat, swiftly drawn, it could silence even so strong a spirit as Lady Selina. And note, mon ami, the faint mark upon the neck, which last night you perhaps did not see. It was the mark of this very ribbon. Ah! To the careless eye, it is nothing. To Poirot, it is everything." He laid it carefully aside, then crossed to the desk. The open drawer was empty, but he examined the edges with a magnifying glass. "She kept letters here, I think. Letters, sealed with wax. The fragment in the grate was one of these. She sought to destroy it, but too late. Hastings, always remember, paper burns quickly, wax less so. It is the wax that speaks." He drew out the charred scrap once more. Against the ash-blackened surface, a tiny remnant of blue wax clung stubbornly. Poirot regarded it with satisfaction. "Blue wax," he said softly. "And yet, I find no stick of blue wax in the house. Curious, n'est-ce pas? Where did it come from, and who used it? That will tell us much." He moved to the bed. The sheets were disturbed, the pillows creased. He bent close, then straightened, his nostrils flaring slightly. "Do you detect it, Hastings?" "No." "Your nose is too blunt. But to me it is plain, the perfume of jasmine. Delicate, persistent. Not Lady Selina's scent, I think, hers was violet. Therefore it belongs to another. A woman who leaned close, perhaps to whisper, perhaps to kill." He stepped back, hands behind his back, and surveyed the room as a general surveys the field of battle. "Velvet. Wax. Jasmine. Three things small, but not insignificant. They are the language in which the murderer has written." I followed him anxiously as he proceeded through the rest of the house. In Clara's chamber, neat and severe, nothing betrayed itself save a bottle of laudanum upon her dressing table. Poirot examined it minutely. "Unopened," he said. "And prescribed some months ago. A red herring, perhaps, or perhaps not." In Hugh's room, littered with hunting boots, cards, and brandy glasses, Poirot found a torn letter from a moneylender. He regarded it with a faint shrug. "Debts, always debts. They are motive, yes, but they are too obvious. I do not like the obvious, Hastings. It insults the intelligence. Ashcroft's study yielded more. Upon his desk lay several legal papers, yet Poirot's eye fell instead upon a small stick of red sealing wax, neatly trimmed, beside a brass stamp. Red, not blue, he murmured. And lawyers, they are creatures of habit. If he used red once, he will use red always. This blue, it comes from elsewhere. We visited Elena Mokova's room, exotic with silks and sheet music. Among the scattered pages lay a velvet cloak, trimmed with ribbon. Poirot lifted it, his eyes gleaming. Voila! The trim matches exactly the ribbon found in Lady Selina's room. But see, it is intact. Not torn. Therefore the ribbon beneath the bed came not from this cloak, though at first it would appear so. A trick, Hastings, to lead us astray. One force piced. Last of all, we entered Miss Dyer's chamber. It was a small, austere space, furnished with a narrow bed, a desk, and a bureau. Poirot moved softly, opening drawers with a light touch. At last he drew out a handkerchief, faintly scented. He held it beneath my nose. "Jasmine," he said simply. I started. Then, "Do not leap ahead," Poirot warned. Jasmine is not guilt. It is association. But association, when repeated, becomes evidence. And what is more, he bent to the bureau's bottom drawer and drew out a small packet tied with ribbon. It contained several letters, all in Lady Selina's bold hand. He glanced through them swiftly. Ah! Promises, threats, demands. She had poor Miss Dyer in her power, I think. These are the chains by which she held her. And if one fears exposure, one may act rashly. We returned at last to Poirot's room, where he set out the objects upon the table like pieces of a puzzle, the velvet ribbon, the scorched paper, the glass, the handkerchief. He regarded them with satisfaction, as a painter might his canvas. "Hastings," he said, "you see nothing. You are like the English countryside, broad, simple, honest, but blind. But I see the pattern. The ribbon beneath the bed, torn in struggle. The letter half-burnt, sealed with wax that belongs to no one here. The scent of jasmine where it should not be. These things tell me a story. Not yet complete, but close. Very close." "And what is the story?" I demanded eagerly. Poirot smiled. "Patience. The murderer has written in invisible ink. We must hold it to the flame. But already I see the shape of the truth. The motive, the method, they begin to reveal themselves." He leaned back, closing his eyes, fingertips pressed together. "Velvet hides the dagger, Hastings. Jasmine masks the poison. And wax seals the secret. Ah! It is beautiful, this puzzle. The murderer is clever, but not clever enough. For Hercule Poirot will always see what others do not." I could not repress a shiver. The house was still, the corridors silent, yet I felt the weight of unseen eyes. Somewhere among us, the murderer moved freely, confident, perhaps even amused. And yet, as I looked at Poirot, calm and assured, I felt certain of one thing: the days of freedom for that murderer were numbered. Chapter 6: The Mind's Mirror. The rain had ceased, though the sky remained heavy with clouds. After luncheon, Poirot announced his intention of conducting certain private conversations. He spoke lightly, yet there was a glint in his eye that told me he meant business. The murderer, he explained as we withdrew to the library, is like a man who carries a mask. In public, he wears it firmly. But in solitude, when challenged, it slips, if only by a fraction. Hastings, we shall make the mask slip. He arranged for the suspects to meet him one by one. I sat quietly by, as much a spectator as a recorder of events, though I could not help being drawn into the tension of each encounter. Clara's interview. Clara entered first, her dark gown rustling faintly. She sat erect, her chin lifted, her hands folded in her lap as if to defend herself against intrusion. "Miss Havisham," Poirot began, "your stepmother, she did not love you, I think." "No," Clara said coldly. "Nor I her. That is not a secret." "And yet," Poirot murmured, "last night she summoned her lawyer. She spoke of altering her will. Did you fear what she might decide?" Clara's eyes flashed. "I expected it. She threatened me often enough. But I told you before, Monsieur Poirot, I would not stoop to killing her. I can live without her fortune, though not without my freedom." Poirot inclined his head. "And where were you between 10 and 11 o'clock last night?" "In my room, reading." "Alone, if that is your meaning." Poirot leaned forward slightly. "You wear no perfume, mademoiselle?" "No. I detest it." He smiled faintly. "How curious, then, that your stepmother's room was scented faintly with jasmine. Perhaps another woman entered there, OUI." Clara regarded him steadily. "If so, it was not I. Ask Miss Markova, she bathes in the stuff." With that, she rose, calm but defiant, and departed. Poirot watched her go, his expression unreadable. Hugh's interview. Hugh followed, swaggering a little, though I thought his bravado forced. He flung himself into a chair and crossed his legs. "Well, Poirot? Going to tell me I throttled the old woman for her pearls?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Mon ami, if you had strangled Lady Selina, you would not sit so carelessly. Guilt, it does not lounge, it stiffens." Hugh gave a harsh laugh. "Then we're done." "Not quite," Poirot said softly. "Your debts, they press upon you? Gamblers, moneylenders, they are not patient men." Hugh scowled. "What of it? You quarrelled with Lady Selina. Perhaps she refused you help. Perhaps you snatched at her throat in anger. A moment's impulse, and she is dead." Hugh's face darkened, but he leaned forward sharply. "If I had killed her, Poirot, do you think I'd have left her sprawled on the floor for everyone to see? No, I'd have made it look like a fall, or a robbery. I may be reckless, but I'm not a fool." Poirot regarded him keenly. "Ah, you speak with knowledge of method. Yet, my dear Hastings, do you not see? This is precisely what the guilty man says, I would not be so foolish. But he is. Always." Hugh flushed, muttered an oath, and stormed out, slamming the door. Poirot merely lifted his shoulders. Mr. Ashcroft's interview. Next came Mr. Ashcroft, trim and correct, his gloves folded neatly in one hand. He bowed politely before seating himself. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, "I should be grateful if you would remember that my position imposes obligations of discretion." "Discretion," Poirot murmured, "is a fine quality, monsieur. But murder, it overrides discretion. You drew up a codicil yesterday?" Ashcroft hesitated. "I did." "And the effect of this codicil?" Lady Selina intended to make certain adjustments to benefit her companion, Miss Markova. Considerably. "Ah. And at whose expense?" Ashcroft pressed his lips together. "At the expense of her stepchildren. A decision most unwise." Poirot leaned closer. "And did you approve?" "I advised against it," Ashcroft said curtly. "It was capricious, emotional. But she was determined. Had she lived until today, the document would have been signed." Then, Poirot said softly, "Someone prevented it." How fortunate for Clara and Hugh, and how unfortunate for Miss Muckover. Ashcroft shifted uncomfortably. I cannot speak to that. Poirot bowed. You speak volumes, monsieur, even in your silence. Ashcroft rose, his composure intact, but his eyes uneasy. Elena Muckover's interview. Elena swept into the room like a figure from the stage, draped in silk, her bracelets chiming faintly. She reclined upon the chair with languid grace, her dark eyes fixed upon Poirot. So, monsieur, she purred, you suspect me of strangling my benefactress. Poirot spread his hands. I suspect everyone, mademoiselle. Even the charming. Elena smiled. Selina adored me. She promised me patronage, riches, a future. Why should I kill the hand that fed me? Because promises may be broken, Poirot said gently. And perhaps you feared she would change her mind. Her eyes flashed. You do not understand artists. We live on passion, not accounts. If she had withdrawn her promise, I should have found another. Admirers are many. Poirot lifted the velvet cloak from beside his chair. This is yours. OUI. The ribbon trim, it resembles the piece found in Lady Selina's room. Her eyes narrowed. Resembles, yes. But it is not. Look closely, intact, as you see. I am no seamstress, Monsieur Poirot. I cannot fabricate ribbons for murder. Poirot inclined his head. Nevertheless, the resemblance is convenient. Too convenient. She laughed lightly, though I thought her hand trembled. You are clever, monsieur. But not clever enough. She glided out before we could reply. Miss Dyer's interview. Last came Miss Dyer. She entered hesitantly, her face pale, her hands trembling. Monsieur Poirot, she whispered, must I? Poirot's voice softened. Courage, mademoiselle. We speak only the truth. She sat, clutching her handkerchief. Poirot leaned toward her gently. You were devoted to Lady Selina. Yet you feared her. She had letters that could harm you. Tears sprang to her eyes. Yes. She threatened to show them. She said she would ruin me. But I did not kill her, I swear it. I could not. Poirot regarded her kindly. And yet, the scent of jasmine clung to her room. And upon your handkerchief, I find the same. She gasped, her lips trembling. I sometimes pass through her chamber to deliver papers. Perhaps the scent lingered. Perhaps, Poirot said softly. But remember, mademoiselle, perfume is like guilt. It clings, however one tries to wash it away. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing, and could say no more. When she had gone, Poirot sat in silence, his fingertips pressed together, his eyes half closed. Well, Hastings? I asked eagerly. What do you think? Poirot opened his eyes. They are like actors upon a stage, mon ami. Each plays a part. Clara, proud defiance. Hugh, careless bravado. Ashcroft, discretion. Elena, charm. Miss Dyer, fear. But beneath the mask, the truth stirs. And you know it. Not yet. But I have seen enough. The murderer is clever, yes, but already he, or she, has betrayed themselves. The mask, it slipped. Soon, very soon, we shall strip it away. He leaned back, his eyes gleaming. The end approaches, Hastings. But the denouement, that must be perfect. One more piece, and the puzzle is complete. A silence fell, broken only by the ticking of the clock. Somewhere in the house, a door closed softly, and I could not help but wonder, was it the hand of the murderer, still confident of escape, or already trembling at the shadow of discovery? Chapter 7. The Midnight Snare. The day passed in a cloud of unease. Whispers travelled along the corridors of Haverley Court, and the household, once proud and imperious under Lady Selina's rule, seemed reduced to fragments of suspicion and fear. Meals were taken in silence, broken only by the scrape of cutlery. No one trusted another, and each seemed to watch furtively, as though gauging how much was known or guessed. Poirot, however, was serene. He passed the afternoon polishing his moustaches with great care and rearranging the objects upon his dressing table with mathematical precision. I grew increasingly restless. "Poirot," I protested at last, "are you content to sit here, while the murderer goes free in this very house?" "Patience, mon ami," he replied. "The fish, it swims near the surface. One does not leap into the pond with a stick. One casts the line, one waits, and then the hook is set." His words proved prophetic. That evening, after supper, he drew me aside and spoke in a whisper. "Hastings, tonight we play a little drama. You will assist me. What must I do?" "Merely observe. But with attention. For tonight, the murderer will reveal himself, or herself." The household retired early, yet none slept easily. I had been given a small room adjoining Poirot's, and as the hours passed, I lay awake, my nerves taut. The house was silent save for the sighing of the wind and the occasional creak of timber. At 11:15, Poirot tapped lightly at my door. He was fully dressed, his shoes polished, his tie immaculate, as though for a reception rather than a vigil. "Come, Hastings," he murmured. "The time is ripe." He led me to Lady Selina's chamber, still preserved as it had been on the night of her death. The fire had burned low, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Poirot moved softly, placing upon the desk a single candle. "Observe, mon ami," he said, lowering his voice. "I have left upon the table the velvet ribbon and the scorched letter. They are bait. The murderer, he fears discovery. He knows that in these objects lies his ruin. He will seek to remove them." I felt a shiver. "You mean he will return here tonight?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "But naturally. And we shall be waiting." He motioned me into the shadowed corner behind the screen. There we crouched, silent, scarcely daring to breathe. The candle flickered, the minutes dragged. Midnight came and went. Still, we waited. Then, a sound. Soft footsteps in the corridor. A pause at the door. The faintest creak as the handle turned. My heart hammered so loudly I feared it must betray us. The door opened slowly, and a figure slipped inside. Cloaked, hooded, the intruder moved swiftly to the desk. A hand stretched toward the ribbon, the other toward the letter. Poirot stepped forward, switching on the lamp with a click. "Bonsoir," he said smoothly. "The little promenade at midnight, it is dangerous, n'est-ce pas?" The figure froze, then turned sharply. The hood fell back. It was Miss Dyer, pale as chalk, her eyes wide with terror. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped. I came only to steal, mademoiselle? To destroy? That is not the errand of innocence." She shook her head wildly. "No, you don't understand. She made me promise never to let her secrets be revealed. I thought, if I removed the letter." Poirot regarded her calmly. "But the letter is already burned, mademoiselle. What remains, it condemns not Lady Selina, but her killer." She staggered, clutching at the desk. "I swear I didn't kill her. I feared her, yes. She threatened me, yes. But I did not touch her." Her voice broke into sobs, and she sank into the chair, burying her face in her hands. Poirot touched my arm and motioned me to help her back to her chamber. "She is frightened, Hastings," he murmured once we were alone again. "But fear, it is not the same as guilt. She seeks to hide, but not the act of murder. No, she hides her shame, her past. She is weak, not wicked." I exhaled heavily. "Then we are no further." "On the contrary," Poirot said softly. "We are much further. For the true murderer will now be desperate. He sees the net closing. And in his desperation, he will betray himself." The rest of the night passed without further incident, but the following morning the household buzzed with rumors. Miss Dyer, wan and trembling, remained in her chamber. Elena Mokova laughed a little too loudly at breakfast. Hugh smoked incessantly, his fingers twitching. Clara moved with icy composure, while Ashcroft avoided all eyes. Poirot alone was cheerful. He walked in the garden after the rain, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his stick tapping lightly upon the path. At luncheon, he addressed the company. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, rising, "you are weary of suspense. So am I. Therefore, tonight at 8 o'clock, in the drawing-room, I shall reveal the truth. The murderer of Lady Selina will be named." A hush fell. Eyes met and broke away. Colour drained from more than one cheek. Poirot's gaze travelled slowly around the table, resting upon each in turn. His smile was gentle, almost mocking. "Until then," he added, "I advise repose. It is the last you shall enjoy, for one among you." That evening, as the clock ticked inexorably toward 8, the house was charged with tension. Doors closed softly, footsteps echoed upon the stairs. I caught glimpses of faces pale and strained, of hands trembling as they poured wine or lit cigarettes. Poirot prepared himself like an actor dressing for the stage. He adjusted his tie, brushed a speck from his sleeve, and twirled his moustaches until they gleamed like polished ebony. "Hastings," he said, "tonight we bring down the curtain. The play has been long, the audience restless, but the ending, it will be satisfying." I asked him once more, urgently, "Poirot, you know? You are certain?" He smiled. "But of course. The murderer is like a man who has embroidered a pattern. He works carefully, cleverly, but he makes one stitch too many. Poirot sees that stitch. That is enough." The clock struck 8. Poirot rose. "Come, Hastings. It is time." And together we walked to the drawing-room, where the suspects waited, each with a shadow upon their face. Chapter 8, The Velvet Noose. The drawing-room at Haverley Court had never seemed so sombre. The curtains were drawn, the lamps lit, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Upon the mantel, the clock ticked solemnly, each beat marking the approach of truth. The company assembled unwillingly. Clara sat stiff and pale, her hands clasped. Hugh lounged, but the cigarette trembled between his fingers. Elena Mokova was a blaze of colour, though her laughter had deserted her. Ashcroft stood near the fire, calm, too calm. Miss Dyer hovered near the door, her face pinched with dread. Poirot entered last, immaculate as ever, his shoes gleaming, his moustaches like black crescents of authority. I followed him, my notebook in hand. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, bowing slightly, "we are come to the end. Tonight, we resolve the puzzle. Tonight, we give justice to Lady Selina Havisham." There was a stir, a shifting of limbs, a sharp intake of breath. Poirot raised a hand. "You are weary of suspicion, I know. Each of you has felt the shadow of the gallows at your shoulder. But only one of you wears it truly. One among you tightened the velvet ribbon about Lady Selina's throat. One among you sought to hide the truth with fire and lies. And tonight, Hercule Poirot shall name that person. The elimination. Poirot turned first to Clara. Mademoiselle Clara, you hated your stepmother, OUI. She made your life bitter, she threatened your inheritance. But hatred is not guilt. You had no jasmine perfume and no blue wax. Your part in this drama is of resentment, not murder. Clara's chin lifted proudly, though her eyes glittered with unshed tears. Poirot moved to Hugh. Monsieur Hugh, your debts are heavy, your quarrels loud. But the crime, it was not yours. You are impetuous, careless, perhaps reckless. But this murder, it was planned with calculation. That is not your gift. Hugh flashed angrily, but said nothing. Poirot's gaze shifted to Miss Dyer, who shrank under it. Mademoiselle Dyer, you feared Lady Selina, for she held your secrets in her hand. You wore jasmine, yes. You crept into her chamber to recover the incriminating letters, yes. But you are timid, too timid for murder. Your tears are of truth, not deceit. Miss Dyer sobbed quietly, relief mingling with despair. Poirot turned, and his tone sharpened. Mademoiselle Helena. To you Lady Selina promised wealth, sponsorship, the glitter of success. And to you she might also have brought disappointment, for she was capricious. Your cloak bore velvet trim, and at first glance, suspicion points to you. But no, the ribbon beneath the bed was torn away in struggle. Your cloak is intact. You are selfish, perhaps, but not the killer. Helena let out a low laugh, though her hands trembled upon her lap. At last, Poirot's eye settled upon Mr. Ashcroft. The room seemed to grow stiller. The trap springs. Monsieur Ashcroft, Poirot said softly. You are a man of law, of precision, of discretion. You would have us believe you are merely the witness to Lady Selina's intentions. But no. You are much more. Ashcroft's thin lips pressed tighter, but he did not move. Poirot continued, his voice deliberate. Consider the facts, Miss Amos. A velvet ribbon was the weapon. Who among you had the opportunity to be near Lady Selina, to speak privately, to move close enough to slip it around her throat? The lawyer, the trusted adviser. She would not suspect him. He lifted the scorched scrap of paper from the table. A letter, sealed with blue wax. Lady Selina burned it, but too late. The blue wax, not found in this house. And yet, in Mr. Ashcroft's desk, there is sealing wax. Red, yes. But a lawyer, he must have others. He carries them with him. This blue wax, his. Ashcroft stirred, his eyes narrowing. You speculate, Monsieur Poirot. Speculate. Poirot's moustaches bristled. None. I observe. You spoke of Lady Selina's codicil. You said it was to benefit Mademoiselle Mokova, to disinherit the stepchildren. But was that the truth? Or was it a lie to divert suspicion? For the codicil, I believe, concerned you, monsieur. Lady Selina threatened to expose some indiscretion, some fraud in which you were entangled. She held the letter, proof, perhaps. She taunted you with it. And you, fearing ruin, seized the velvet ribbon and silenced her. There was a gasp from Clara, a curse from Hugh. Helena leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Poirot's voice rose, sharp and triumphant. You killed her, Mr. Ashcroft. You burned the letter, but overlooked the wax. You left the ribbon torn in struggle. You thought yourself cautious, but you made one stitch too many. And Poirot sees. The confession. For a long moment, Ashcroft said nothing. His face was pale, his hands clasped so tightly the knuckles whitened. Then, slowly, he rose. You are clever, Monsieur Poirot, he said hoarsely. Too clever. Yes, she had discovered it. A small matter, a fund misused, a trust betrayed. She threatened to expose me, to end my career. All my years of service, ruined. I begged her for mercy. She laughed. His voice hardened, his eyes burning. She laughed, and I saw no way out. The ribbon lay upon her dressing table. I acted, swiftly, desperately. And when it was done, I burned the letter. But fate, it seems, leaves traces even a careful man cannot erase. He sank back into his chair, his shoulders slumping. So, it ends. Poirot bowed slightly. It ends, yes. Lady Selina is avenged. Poirot's reflection. The household erupted into voices, but Poirot raised his hand, commanding silence. Miss Amiss, let this be a lesson. Murder, it is never perfect. The human soul, it leaves its imprint, in wax, in velvet, in perfume. The murderer may plan, may calculate, but always he overlooks the little detail. And it is the little detail that speaks to Poirot. He turned to me with a faint smile. Hastings, you see now why patience is required? The truth, it ripens. And at the right moment, it falls into the hand. I could only nod, overwhelmed by the brilliance of his deductions. As Ashcroft was led away, the others dispersed silently, their faces shadowed with relief, guilt, or shame. Poirot remained by the fire, gazing into the flames. A clever man, Hastings, he murmured. But cleverness without order, without discipline, is dangerous. He embroidered too far, and the pattern betrayed him. He smoothed his moustaches, his eyes gleaming. And thus ends the case of the velvet noose.